Well, it is 6 o'clock. Looks like we have enough to have a quorum, so I will call the meeting of the Campus Reconfiguration Committee to order and ask the clerk to take roll, please.
Carroll.
Here.
Manning.
Here.
Glassbrenner. Turk.
Here.
Frank.
Here.
Williamson.
Here.
You've got 5 present, you have 1.
Very good. And are we in compliance with the open meetings law?
Yes, Mr. Chair, the meeting is properly noticed.
All right, before us we have a 16-point agenda. Do I have a motion to approve that? Motion by Frank, second by Williamson to approve the agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right. We also have minutes from the April 30th meeting. Anybody have questions, clarifications, corrections on those minutes? Hearing none, the chair declares that those minutes are approved as printed. Item 6, public comment. Do we have anybody from the public that would like to comment before the committee tonight? Anybody online? No. All right. Then we're going to move to item 7, which will be a brief closed session. For the purpose, statutorily, the citation is there in the agenda, and so we'll be talking about a potential future use of campus buildings. Again, this should be just brief. We shouldn't be in closed session long, so don't go too far away, Rod.
Okay.
All right, so
So I need a motion to go into closed session.
we will be out of quorum.
Motion by Mr. Manning to go to closed session, second by Mr. Frank.
But we will be out of quorum because
No, you
Steve.
won't. You got one, you'll have just one, you'll have 4.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. All right. So you'll be in the parking lot briefly, Steve, online, okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to go into closed session. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Make a note that it was a unanimous vote to go into closed session. Okay, we are back in open session. Item 8 on our agenda, or item 9 on our agenda, I should say, is possible action on items from closed session. We have nothing to act on from that session. So we will move on to item 10, which is reports, starting with just a brief campus status update.
There's nothing. I met with Mike today. He hasn't had any communication with the UW system, so said he would probably reach out because we still have
Yep.
other things that we need them to take care of.
Yep, a lot of records and things like that, and so they get past their situation they've got going on down there, then maybe they can get some folks up here. So as far as, and this would be jumping ahead to C, assessment of specialized items in campus buildings. Worked with Brandon Federley to go through the science building. He identified lots of stuff out there that's still very usable. Ithaca Schools did come in, which Brandon Federley works for, and they removed some tables and lab stuff and things like that they will find very useful with their science program. I'm meeting folks from the Richland Center schools out there tomorrow afternoon for them to do the same thing, go through the science building and see what all they can use in their classrooms and be able to, there's still some very nice equipment out there that was left behind, so we're getting it into the hands of school districts that can use it. Once the 2 of them are done, they have, Brandon said he'll reach out to surrounding schools then as well to see if there are items still left in there that they could use in their programs. They have a very, a lot of like physics lab equipment, but at Ithaca they don't have physics class anymore. So they don't have enough students to run it, so it's still sitting there, but hopefully Richland Center can use some of it. They took some lab tables that they thought were just going to be absolutely fantastic for their classroom, so that was good. And the rural library is finishing up on getting the stuff that they wanted out. They took a lot of tables and things like that out of the library building and some out of the classroom building, a couple computer projectors, a smart board, and different things like that that they're definitely going to be able to integrate into the programming at the library, so they're very appreciative of everything. Plus a bunch of books that they took too. They did not take them all, unfortunately, but they took a lot of them, so it has definitely cut down the inventory that's still out there. The final item they're interested in, there's several large piles of rocks that were removed from the roofs of the buildings when they did roof work, and they're actually going to be doing a big landscaping project at the library this summer, and I wondered if they could come and get some of those rocks. I talked to Randy about it. He said, oh, sure, there's a ton of them out there, so that can work out good.
I also spoke with Greg Zimmerman from the Campus Foundation because they are the ones who purchased the plotting machine. So they are working, they reached out to the retired geology professor, and she gave them some information, and they're going to try to get it donated to a school or a printing company. So they're working on that.
It's very nice units, about this wide. You know, it's a very specialized piece of equipment, but quite valuable to somebody who can use it. So.
And it sounds like it needs some software that goes with it, so they're trying to track that down and figure all that out before they pass it on. So they'll let us know when they're ready.
Very good.
And then if we could skip the venture architect update, because they're down further.
They're on the agenda later.
They're on the
Okay, very
agenda
good.
later,
Very
yes.
good. Any questions on any of the campus updates we've given?
When they took the books, did they take the shelving too?
They took some shelving. You're talking about the library shelving, correct? Yeah, they took some. They were disassembling it, and it was a lot of disassembly when they started working, and then realized that even though they wanted to take more of it, it was so much labor tearing it apart and putting it back together that it wasn't worth it. So they did not take as much as they had originally intended.
I just know farmers, they could use that in their sheds. Come in handy.
There's
Farmers do.
Junk collectors.
Do cows read books? All right, any other questions? No? All right, then let's move on to item 11, discussion and possible action, review of space needs assessment and next steps. And we do have Corey from Venture Architects online with us.
Good evening.
Good
Hopefully you
evening.
can hear me.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. So next steps, as you know, that we did have some additional services for potential additional 3 buildings for building assessment, the ambulance, Pine Valley, and the assignment center. Has there already been news if that's been approved? So we're sure.
The board approved that last night.
Excellent, excellent. I didn't see it online, so just wanted to question. So we'll get going on that as quickly as possible, go through that. Kind of pause with the master planning. We are looking at some areas, as you know, we did at one point in time looking at the campus. I know that's been kind of not a preferred site, so we kind of paused off on that. What we have been looking at, basically your existing campus downtown, and looking at what potentially possibilities and conceptual design, what that could look like. Can I share my screen?
I think you should be able to.
Sure.
See if I can make this work. Let's try this. For some reason it's not coming off of what I need to share. Let's try this. There, can you see
There.
this?
Yep.
Diagram. Okay, good. So this is the existing campus, this is the existing courthouse, if you can see my hand scrolling around. So there was a couple of the options that we were looking at. It was mentioned previously that potentially closing down the street, purchase some additional properties adjacent to the campus. So we were looking at, and again, none of this has been phased, this is all conceptual, but size-wise of what potentially would be needed for any additional space. Doing the law enforcement center in this blue area. You can connect to the existing facilities. That way, if the law enforcement center basically gets constructed first, you still have that path to the courts for anyone that's been detained, as well as then Orange would be a new justice center, and including that into that. You'd still have, again, you'd want that connection to the law enforcement center, and as well as the government center as well. And then any of those spaces would potentially could be renovated into additional county government areas. As you know, that there's a lot of potential in the government, existing government center, the accessibility issues, et cetera. So some additional spaces to meet those requirements would be needed. So any additions to the campus could potentially be accommodated here right downtown.
Just to clarify for folks, when you say campus, you mean our current downtown county government location, not the UW Richland campus. So.
Correct, sorry, yes.
Need to make two different words for that.
Yep.
A couple other areas that we're kind of looking at, and some of just reconfigurations, and again, kind of what would go first. We want to keep in mind that you still have to maintain access to the existing facilities, and as you try to get anything constructed to these two. I don't want to take lightly as well with any renovation. Some of the first things we do want to mention, and as I think you all know, that the current courtroom, there are some safety and security issues with that for public, for judicial staff, the judge, as well as detainees and victims. Proposing to do some renovation in that as well. And then once the Justice Center would be, if you do decide to move into a new facility for that, that current courtroom could be utilized as a new county boardroom. With the stadium seating, I think it would work out quite well for that. And then kind of relocate where you are right now. There are some issues, specifically accessibility and egress out of that room. So obviously that would help in that situation. So then again, this is just another concept, looking at different other areas as well, just reconfiguring it, what could happen in law enforcement center. This way you have connected to the courts, to the existing, and then new justice could also be accommodated in this configuration. So again, these are just concepts, especially for future needs in that. But as you can see, the existing street would need to be closed, and then purchasing of adjacent properties. Any questions on these currently? Or if there's any other locations that we may want to look at. Now, I know I mentioned, and we threw out some numbers early on, maybe about a year ago, as far as if you did a whole new facility, obviously that's quite costly. But we do feel that these adjacent additions and then renovations of your existing facilities could accommodate Richland County quite well.
Corey, nothing really for parking though, figured in?
Well, with this, and depending upon the, which concept we would look at, you can kind of see here with these purchase of these two properties, we'd have some additional parking for those locations. And then how that would all lay out, we'd look at that. Same with some of these other ones, we'd have to get adjacent parking into these areas as if these buildings, existing buildings would be torn down. And then just kind of looking at that. There is another option that potentially look at with the law enforcement center. And I see if I can show you that here. You take this portion and you basically add on a floor to that. That would open up more space as far as for parking. And then essentially the law enforcement center would be essentially sheriff's booking, etc. would be on the first floor, and you could move up. The housing would be like on a second, third floor to accommodate the beds that would be needed. So there are other opportunities, but just kind of looking at that, your government campus downtown, that site right now.
So essentially, they could have like their, garage entry, sally port, and all that on the ground level of that new building, and possibly indoor parking for squads and stuff underneath.
Correct.
Okay.
I have a question. You mentioned, and we've talked about buying adjacent property for parking. How would that compare if we had maybe a 2 or 3 story parking ramp?
We could check into that, what you could accommodate as far as how much could be accounted for that. That way to see how many additional stalls that you could basically locate on that site, and give you that as well for our next update.
Okay.
You think your numbers, original numbers, off-site total new campus complex, I mean, I think we need to keep them numbers somewhat accurate, just so we have that to show the rest of the board why, you know, something like this is what we can afford. Versus,
Certainly.
I mean, as long as it's within, I mean, everything still keeps going up, so.
Yeah, and no, I agree with that. Any of these concepts as well, so that is, just what I was talking about here is if you took the law enforcement, parking, et cetera, on the first floor and you raised up the building, there would be some additional cost to that as well. So we'd have to update that as well as the Justice Center, and then I'll get the updates for the parking ramp, see what we could accommodate there. And you do want to basically compare that with a new facility off-site someplace, and pick a generic site. That way you would have that comparison, otherwise you really don't know, you know, what would be in the best interest.
So are these one floor, are these one level facility, one level building structure, just one floor?
Some of these, so the Justice Center here that I have located would be a 2-story facility. The portion of the law enforcement center, if you can see where I have, it says law enforcement center right now, that would be 1 story, and then where I have that red box here, if you can kind of highlight that, that would be essentially the housing, could be 2 stories. So then if you do accommodate and make that could potentially be a 3-story building, just for the law enforcement center. So again, additional concepts, and as we narrow some of these down, each one of these concepts would have different pricing.
One other site that's been suggested multiple times by different people, Corey, is there's vacant land out in the community's North Industrial Park that has infrastructure already there, but it's land. I mean, there's no improvements on it right now at all. Would that be something you guys, if we got you the information on the property, could take a look at and just say, well, okay, if we looked at building something here in stages, this is how it might look?
Yeah, if you can give me the properties out there that we can take a look at, the GIS site or something, and send it, we definitely will evaluate that.
Yeah, Tricia's gonna reach out to the city administrator and see if we can get info on that, get that to you.
Excellent.
There is water and sewer there.
Oh, yeah, there's water, sewer, power, all right there, so, but it's just flat land right now, so from the ground up.
I talked to Josh about that in the past. I said, what would be the chances of whatever sand we remove to flatten it and make it usable, that you could use for sand in the highway? And he thought that'd be possible.
Pine Manor area, anything out there?
We had discussed that, yeah, we own some land out there, but when they looked at it, it's not really buildable land. It would be incredibly challenging to build anything of the scale we would need to accommodate this, but we have thought about that. And then, of course, another option would be, okay, where could we acquire land that we own already? You know, the city industrial park land has been available for a while, and their perspective is they would strongly encourage us to consider that, so. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Other than that, there isn't, you know, like, if you look within the limits of the city, there aren't a lot of places where something like this would fit. You'd have to look on the edges or out somewhere, which is, a lot of counties wind up doing that.
Just for that reason. Too bad we couldn't share with the hospital.
Yeah.
All that space out there, if we had a hospital complex, jail, courthouse, all there, that would sure be nice.
One thing to keep in mind as you're looking at different sites, being with the Justice Center, that will have to be in the county seat. So if you start to get around the perimeter, any of that would have to be annexed in.
Yeah, and that property right now has no infrastructure to it. The city had gotten a $2+ million grant to extend infrastructure, but they're repurposing that grant now because the hospital's not going to build till like 2032.
Yeah.
So if we needed to put the infrastructure in, we'd have to pay for it.
How far out are we
For,
building? I mean, nice tomorrow, but between the Pine Valley Manor,
yeah.
money that's
it's-
sitting
no,
there, I mean,
It's going to be a few years before we're moving anything.
yeah,
for sure.
2032 is not an unrealistic reality, I hate to say.
Yeah, if you pull the trigger now for design of facility, you're probably 12 months out there, and then you're probably, depending upon it, you might be 2.5 years out from that for construction. So overall, you're looking about 3.5 years.
It'll take us that long to make a decision.
No.
And that'd be 3.5 years on like a first phase, right?
Yeah, however that's phased out, depending upon the size of the facility, et cetera, yes.
Corey, what were you saying about needing the annex for land that we want to use?
If the courts go out there, it would have to be in the county seat.
Why is that?
That's legislative requirement.
Okay.
No, we're not coming to Viola.
You're not moving the county seat, so
Looks good, Corey, thank you. I don't have any more questions. If you can bring us that stuff next time and any,
Sounds good?
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, let's move on to item 12, discussion and possible action, next steps for future uses of the campus property. So we had discussed at our last meeting that it was time to come up with a way for folks to show interest, to express what they would have in mind if they were proposing to get the property from us and turn it into something else. So our administrator's done some research and contacting here.
Yeah, so I think ultimately we have three options for the campus property. One is we keep, and from what I'm hearing, that's not what we're looking to do. Is that a fair assessment?
possibly.
Given its current status, I don't know that we have a viable use for it at this moment.
Correct.
Okay.
It would involve a changing of priorities to do that.
So I did reach out to Southwestern Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission. They do have the ability to put this out in an RFP where we could get proposals for individuals on what they want to do with the land. And that would give us some ability to build in some contingencies. So I think sometimes there's people who say, we don't want to have storage units out there, we want to have it be where it's going to help with economic development. So this is an option, and they're willing to come and talk to us at our next meeting about how this process would work, what it would look like, the cost to it, because this isn't something that we would necessarily have the bandwidth to take on as far as drafting a proposal, putting it out there, setting up tours at some point in time, gathering all the information. I did talk with Corey. He said they are able to work with whomever would do this so that they can make sure that the information is shared appropriately, all the specs, all the information that they have about it. So that is something that we can start the process on if you guys are on board with that.
What are the other options, or are
I think the other option is we just reach out to a real estate agent
Oh.
and we say, put it out on the market and see what you can get for
Okay.
it.
Hey, I've got something I'd like to share.
Go ahead, Steve.
I went to this housing summit in Hillsborough a couple weeks ago, and I've asked for the PowerPoints and things so I can share with you guys. As soon as I get them, I will pass that on. But it turns out that Habitat for Humanity has an interesting new business model they've been using, and that's what's going on in Hillsborough. They're putting in some housing, and they're not active like they used to, where they round up volunteers and they almost play hammers. It's different, and I think we ought to at least be aware of that kind of thing and see whether it fits in with what we do.
Okay. Yeah, whatever information you can get us, we'd be happy to take a look at. Thank you.
Yep.
This is a little bit off point, but I noticed all that equipment has been taken away from there. Where they was going to add that other building. Do you know anything about that, what's going on? And this big expensive equipment to move, so something major.
Out at Panorama Estates, you mean?
Yeah.
No, I don't know. The last I heard from the mayor, he said they're hoping to get the ground broken next month.
But the equipment is gone, I didn't notice.
Yeah,
Well, the
so,
equipment, they would do that with.
I know. It's been an ongoing point of contention with the city, I know, with the developer, trying to get them moving on it. But there is a signed developers agreement, so they're supposed to be doing certain things at certain milestones.
Yeah.
What resources do we have
We give for,
as far as if they just don't?
well, we don't add
That's up,
anything
yes.
because it's city. You know, they could, I mean, there are provisions in the agreement that if they're violated, they could take legal action. They haven't up to this point, but that's within their options.
So I guess at this point, I'd be interested to hear what Southwest
Okay.
has to say. I think there's, and I know we're a government entity, but I also think we need to look at it, this is a business venture, because I know there's people looking for property out there in the business world, and I want us to make sure that we're making all those contacts that we can.
So I will let them come, I think questions that they're gonna want to know when they're building, if we decide to go with them, if they're building an RFP is, you know, do we want community input just as far as their opinions on what happens, and then how do we gather that information? Do we have parameters on what people can use it for? Because I think they'll want to have that built in, because we don't want somebody to spend a lot of time giving us a proposal for storage units if we're saying, no,
Right.
that's not an option.
So is this something that they will help build? Are we gonna, do we hire them to have those meetings and to get the pub PR out and have those, and
Potentially, yes, absolutely.
interesting?
Yeah.
We have the advantage that we don't have to do that ourselves then. So-
Oh gosh, yeah. Just having an agency like that who's skilled at it would be fabulous.
And if this is something we're going to look towards, we could reach out to the UW system and find out if the $2 million we get could be used to fund this.
We got that 2 million yet?
We haven't, but we have to have a full plan of how we're going to spend it before we can make the request, so that'll be things we'll have to figure out.
We're trying to get that nailed down so we can get it in.
That's
Because
a
we're-
little tough when we don't know what we're doing with the.
Well, we know we're doing one bridge because we're paying for that, and we'll look to replenish that money with grant funds. We have the other bridge, we have parking lot work, things like that we have talked initially about doing.
General maintenance, maintain it.
Potentially, you know, there is match funds needed for the tennis court and basketball court projects that they've got. That grant money from the state might be good match funds. And, you know, certainly there's, you know, if we can get,
Burn up $2 million.
yeah, it'll go fast. It's what, $600,000-$700,000 for the one bridge. The other one might be a little cheaper, but not much.
But if you're gonna make it to grade, so it matches the other one for width and length,
And that's our thinking is, okay, well, then we provide two good quality entrances to the properties.
Yeah.
Whoever's going to be using it, that adds value to them, so.
yeah, definitely. Okay. So would they be at the next meeting then, you think?
Yes,
Wow.
they're willing to be at the next meeting if we want them to be.
Okay, let's do that then. I take over for it. Either motion on that or not, right?
Who would be at the next meeting?
Southwest Regional Planning.
Okay.
Right. So that brings us down to discussion and possible action item 13, set future meeting date.
So we talked about potentially June 4th, so that if we do have them come, and that is something you want to pass on to the next committee, that'll have the opportunity to get to executive and potentially go on board, if that's the route you guys look to take.
That work for everybody? June 4th, 6 p.m.
As long as that continues to work for everybody, or if people are looking to have earlier, we can do that.
What's the date again?
June
4th.
4th.
Wednesday.
4th of July.
June.
I know.
5 or 6 doesn't matter to me.
Okay.
Earlier better, but I mean, it worked for
We'll do
everyone.
5 and then instead?
We'll gladly do 5.
Okay, let's do
You
5.
could have gone with our hour.
What time?
5 PM.
5 p.m. Thank you.
All right, do we have any correspondence? All right, so if we meet again on June 4th at 5 PM, what items do we want on the agenda? Other than we know Southwest Regional Planning will be here. Corey was going to come back with some new information for us. Will you be able to be ready by then, Corey, or do we need to look at a subsequent meeting for that?
If I can get the information on that site of the industrial, I should be able to accommodate that.
Okay. Very good.
And I'll bring you folks in that housing summit.
No, I haven't mentioned, put that in.
Yep, sounds good. We'll keep giving our updates on what we're doing with items out of the campus and stuff. Any other things you want to bring for the agenda? All right.
Putting lottery numbers.
That brings us down to item 16, looking for a motion to adjourn from Mr. Manning, second by Mr. Williamson. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I do have one thought on the bridge.
We are adjourned, thank you.